Thank you for the warm welcome. Maybe 2 words in advance. When I got this invitation to talk about smart city, I realized on one hand, smart city can be everything. And as we discussed about market figures, I see Benedetto was well prepared on market figures, so I don't add to this one. So as we discuss about market figures, we might say, well, who cares about smart cities? You know, this sounds like a government issue. So I was imagining lots of government people sitting here, joking, because I know it's something we all care about. It's something that impacts us. And I will show you a few thoughts about this, and I know there are lots of other thoughts showing how smart cities and the Internet of Things will impact us. And seeing this huge number of people, I realize I'm not alone with this thinking. In fact, you also got the message, it impacts you also. So let's start with the slides. Nice picture of a city. I need to start with the Bosch slide. And this is not just to promote Bosch, maybe, but this is to open the event on the cross-thinking of applications and on the cross-domain thinking. When you look at Bosch, Bosch by definition is a cross-domain company. Bosch is a company, of course, major strength is in automotive and system integration in automotive. You all know Bosch does not produce car, but you also know that Bosch works in lots of industries and Bosch works in lots of technologies that you all use. Even if you don't see the brand name Bosch on the devices, you all use lots of Bosch technology. And it spreads, of course, from the famous cars, but it spreads from industrial technology, packaging machine, it spreads from energy and building technology, and now you already hear it sounding, why this relates to the topic of today, and it spreads to consumer goods. Again, a topic that we will touch today as relevant to the Internet of Things. So when you look at Bosch, you might say, wow, this guy that prepared the company 100 years ago for the Internet of Things, so maybe the idea is not so new. So to give you an idea of the localization of Bosch, so the Internet of Things is a worldwide thing. The implementation will happen on regional level. Implementations are decided on regional level, maybe by government function, maybe by city administrations, but the technologies used are global technologies. So therefore we think every player that really wants to play successfully in the Internet of Things market should have a global thinking, should have a global adoption of the idea. And as you see, 50% of our sales is in Europe. The other part is outside of Europe. And you also see only a third of our associates of Bosch are based in Europe. So you realized Bosch is really a global company. So again, we think globalization is a must-have. Now, after all these top-level thoughts, let's talk about some megatrends. So the megatrends, we saw it in figures, I put it in picture. The megatrends are very simple. We have environmental challenges. I live in Shanghai, but I also know other cities which are even worse than Shanghai, so I know what environmental challenges mean. But I know we also have issues in Germany about this. We also have issues in Taipei about this. So CO2 reduction, energy efficiency is something we all care about. We all feel it. Day by day, I check the air quality index. This is something I feel, I care. We experience new mobility concepts. Last week, I bought an electrical bike. 5 years ago, I said, who needs such a strange thing? Either it's a bike or it's a motorcycle. Today, it's just a simple adaptation of a mobility need where you need to go 5 minutes to buy a bread or whatever without sweating too much in the hot Shanghai sun. So we see an interconnection of mobility. We see a demographical challenge. We see the demographical evolution. We see it almost in all developed countries, and we see it in Europe very strongly. The society requires solutions for an aging population. We see urbanization, which in mainland China is a strategy. I don't know about the politics in Taiwan, but in fact, Germany is a big village, so you could say Germany is one city. So Germany also fits to that, so it would be an 80 million people city. And we see a need for a connected world, but this is mainly as a result of the megatrends. And on top of all this clustering, more requirements, we also see a need for individualization. People want individual products, people want individual services. So with all this, we see megatrends, but we also see an evolution of markets which are strongly segmented. So keeping all these abstract thoughts in mind, let's drill into an even maybe more abstract figure, and then I'll promise you it will be very concrete afterwards. I think I can fly over this chart, because the main idea behind this, the number of people living on Earth will always be limited. How many people you might think we will have on Earth? 7.3 billion, 10 billion, whatever the number is of people that or inhabitants that the Earth can support, it will be a limited number. But the number of devices we own, we operate, is almost unlimited, because it goes with a factor of 10 to 100 to the number of users. So you see, therefore, the Internet of Things and Services is a much bigger market than smartphones are or automotive cars are. So what is the vision of a connected world? What is the vision of an Internet of Things? The vision of it is that we have all, today, different markets and applications. Today we talk about the industrial market. We think about very special solutions and applications. Today we talk about the mobility market. It's already not automotive, so I'm already on the next stage of saying mobility, because mobility does not just include cars. We think about the energy market, and we talk about the smart home market. All these different applications, domains, will merge. And that's what we call the connected life, and of course, respectively, the connected city. But what does it mean, merging? Merging, of course, does not mean you use a car to cut your hair or whatever. Merging means that we have functions that go across domains. That means your car will bring you automatically to the next train station, where you board the train and you have the fastest track to the next airport or whatever. And making all this possible sounds like science fiction today, but I show you in most of the cases we have all the ingredients ready today. Of course, it's not here today, and we'll be discussing in the launch before. When will it be here? It's hard to predict the year, but we know we have the ingredients today, and we know it will be here. So, example, new mobility concepts, as I explained it to you. It's called connected mobility. So cars know about the traffic, cars know about each other. It's electric driving, a huge trend which can bring a very big contribution to a healthier environment. Automatic driving. Today, every decent automotive company will show a car that drives alone on the roads, as we had it at the CES in Shanghai, the last Audi driving through Shanghai. The comment was this was the most defensive driver Shanghai has ever seen. However, it was automatic driving. We have parking management, and we have multimodal transport systems, and this is the reference from the e-bike. We have transportation means that are based on an individual transportation need, a few meters up to connecting to planes or trains. And you might suspect, when I talk about these things, of course we talk about hardware, but there will be much more software and even much more service included. So therefore, when we did the strategic approach to this, in company internal, we said, which are the blocking points? Which are the roadblocks? Why, if we have all these sensors today, we have all these cars, why aren't things there yet? And we identified a few points, and one of the points we identified is, even I showed to you that Bosch is a company active in energy, mobility, manufacturing, and also in smart home. Even at Bosch, at this time, was a few years ago, we did not have the solution link in between the divisions. So you see, we need to achieve something that some companies still need to achieve internally. We need to achieve this on the level of a city. We need to achieve this on the level of a country and maybe on the level of continents. So this, in fact, shows the scaling challenge. The solution we found for Bosch invested in a few software companies, and we have a business unit that's called Bosch Software Innovations. And in fact, this company has a very clear focus, enable IoT across Bosch, but also outside with solutions outside from Bosch. We need an infrastructure. Whenever we talk about new markets, of course, there are lots of players involved. But especially when we talk about the Internet of Things market, this is a market that by definition will need even much more, require much more partnerships. And I realized also in Benedetta's talk, partnership and cooperation was an important word. Because if you look at the involved IT infrastructure, I'm not talking about the hardware infrastructure, for every single business model. In fact, this is a business case that you define as an Internet of Things, very abstract level. You will have a low level, which are, okay, no laser? Yes, but too soft. So we have the low level of hardware, where all the devices, the components are. Then we have a level above that integrates the device functionality. We call it the device management level. And then you have a set of business rules, which some people call the big data processing. And then you have a user interface and the portal. And then at the end, you have the user. So if you look at this model, this is a very abstract model of an Internet of Things business case. This can be applied to every industry. If you go a step further, you see you will need a hardware and protocol infrastructure layer. Now, this is the point where things already get more specific. This is where segmentation starts, because on the lowest level, on the sensor level, you already need to know exactly what the application is, what the use case is, what the domain requires as functionality. And you see very shy sensor nodes are the enablers for IoT devices. In fact, I asked myself, or I knew it, I just asked myself, how come that people are so aware on sensors in the last years? Because sensor business is not a new business, it's a quite old business, and the explanation is very clear, but people realize one part of intelligent devices is the sensing part. Of course, there's a data processing and transmission part, and there's an actuation part. So sensors are at the heart of it, and the applications can be various. So sensor nodes as IoT enablers. So what are sensor nodes? I'm using lots of abstract words today because I try to generalize industry need and try to drill it down to a specific application need. Therefore, I need to use these words, but I will show you some very concrete products examples at the end, don't worry. Sensor nodes, if we start with the sensors and MEMS, and interestingly, Benedetta used the word MEMS. I think I should explain it. MEMS stands for microelectrical mechanical systems, and MEMS are sensors that sense mechanical parameters, inertial pressure, and stuff like that. And if you look at the history of sensors delivered by Bosch, it started in the early 90s, and it was driven by the automotive market at that time. And regardless to say, you know, Bosch is very strong in automotive. In fact, Bosch engineers invented the so-called Bosch process, which is a deep reactive ion etching process, and brought it to high volume capabilities. And then later on, 2006-07, as you've seen in a chart before, you had these sensors starting to be adapted in consumer electronics. And this is an important point. You see a switch of a technology from one application to another, a transfer from one industry to another industry, and this transfer point, we learned a lot about this transfer point, and exactly we're at the same transfer point today. So from point of view of logics, we are today just removed here. Again, we transfer a technology from an industry that's well established. Smartphones is a very well established industry. It's by definition the biggest MEMS sensor market globally. And we're today in the phase where we have to think, how does this technology transfer into a new domain? So looking back to history, automotive drove the technology basics. I can say consumer electronics drove shrinking, low power, integrated functionality. The question is, what will the third wave, the so-called IoT applications, drive with relation to MEMS sensors? I tried to provide a few informations about this today. If you look at this chart back, just remember fastly the links. You will see that very simple Bosch organization follows market. Again, we think that following the market is one thing, which you need to do as a company, but we think you also need to add some proactivity. And in fact, you've seen a similar slide based on applications at the presentation that was done before me. I show you the history, started in automotive electronics, Bosch Sensor Tech going to consumer electronics, Acoustica addressing MEMS microphone for the same reason as mentioned before. It's a big market, and microphones will be an important ingredient in sensor nodes as they are already today, but in the future even more. And the next is Bosch Connected Devices and Solutions. So you see, we establish organizations along the markets, and of course, these organizations, they all work on the same basic technology, at least till today. The question is, how will this change? By tomorrow, it will change. We know already some changes, and of course, I expect also some surprises. Let's look back. Let's look at history. You might say, I'm in the consumer MEMS, so I fancy smartphones, but when I saw this slide, I said, let's not forget that today's market in a car is already, we have more than 50 MEMS sensors in one car. Now, you might say bad news for Bosch, because the car will be electrical, and I would say take a second look at it, because only some 11 sensors are related to engine management, and these sensors will be outnumbered by the new sensor we will require for autonomous driving and for smart cars. So cars as such in the future will continue to be a main driver of sensor technology, and especially being a driver of very reliable and a very robust sensor technology. So let's not forget the automotive market with all the hype we see today in the smartphone market. It's a basis for technological developments that are highly reliable and highly safe. Okay, now coming closer to my territory, smartphones. Today, the biggest MEMS sensor market is in smartphones. There's nothing more to say. You all have smartphones. I don't know the actual market figures. You have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sensors in it. Not all of them are MEMS sensors, but you surely have an accelerometer. You for most likely have a e-compass or a magnetic sensor. You have a gyroscope. You will have lots of new sensors, and I will show you some evolution towards new sensors that are today not a real standard, but surely will also drive the smartphone. So again, message number 2, let's not forget the smartphone. Let's not forget the automotive, but let's also not forget the smartphone, because this is a huge market today. Size, power consumption, and in some extent accuracy, smartphone is the market driver. So you see the 2 ingredients which I mentioned: high reliability, robustness, combined with ultra-low power, combined with very small size. And you already start feeling where this will lead to. One of the markets we see today is the wearable market that goes directly into this. And I'm happy to see that also some other people pick up the biggest wearable. The car is the biggest wearable we have. So you see, we see a merging of these industries. But when we look at tomorrow, So taking the ingredients, small, reliable, ultra-low power. So the best of the two worlds that we have today. And we say, what is a smart thing? Well, a smart thing is, I would put a definition on that, is something that's more useful than something that's not smart. Because smart is not an intrinsic property of something. I don't need processing power in a device when I don't care about this device. So we could do microcontrollers, we could do software in every device we have. Will this be useful? No. So I would then even call them stupid devices, as we see lots of wearables today, which I would not call smart things. I would just call them waste, maybe, in the best case. So smart is a category that's beyond processing power. It's a totally different thing. Smart means we bring additional sense to things. Sense not only in the means of sensing, but also in the means of utilization value. And when you look at all this, you see that all these applications, these are just some pictures taken out of the product portfolio of Bosch and some of our customers. All these things can be improved, can be made better. And this is where we see what is the link in between all these two old industries towards the new industry, Internet of Things. Again, a more structural slide. We introduced the notion of a sensor node, and we say this is the atom of the Internet of Things. It is very abstract. It's in fact the same approach as you need to have something that senses, you need to have a processing, you have a transmission. And on the other side of the hardware, you would need all the service stack that I mentioned before, and you need the services. So we, Bosch SensorTech, we work on this side, on the sensor integration side, and we, as Bosch SensorTech, a division of Bosch, we think on what's next for us. Of course, we're in the big frame of Bosch. Of course, we have all our partner divisions connecting all the devices. As you know, it was announced 2 years ago on the CES that all new Bosch devices manufactured will have the ability to interconnect. Not all of them to the internet, but to interconnect to other devices. So what is our target in this? We take the technology proven in automotive, we make it smaller, we reduce the power. We're famous for launching the smallest power devices in the market. We integrate them with microcontroller and software. But when we at Bosch SensorTech talk about integration, we don't talk about microcontrollers again. We think the microcontroller is a tool. It's a wheel, or it's an engine, or whatever. It's a kind of a tool. What's really important is the function of the microcontroller. So whenever we integrate a solution, it comes with software. We went the first step going on a standard Cortex M4, M0, standardized microcontroller architecture. But we are convinced if we want to really go into ultra-low power, always on, constant availability, we need to go away from the mainstream, because the mainstream means serves lots of purposes and is not specifically good for one. So I will show an example what the answer to this is. And the other thing is, what we've seen as today's sensors in smartphones, we think it's just the beginning. Inertial sensors, today how boring. Barometric pressure sensors, yes, quite boring. We think sensors are then really useful when they enhance our senses. I think it's useless to do an artificial eye, because most likely it will never match the performance of the eyes that nature gave us. So we shouldn't start replacing human senses, but we should start adding to them. One of the things is adding parameters that we sense that humans cannot sense. Example is CO2. Example is particles in the air. Example is UV. These are parameters that with our human senses we cannot sense, but these sensors are relevant to our well-being, to our health. And this is what I mean, we need new sensors. Some examples. 9 degree of freedom sensor BHI 160. So this is the first boring slide, maybe, which shows some figures. I try to avoid microamps and milli-G or whatever. What's special about this is the first sensor that has a customized, optimized processing unit. It's in fact a 9 degree of freedom processing sensor. It includes an accelerometer gyroscope inside, so the sensor measurement principle says sensors included are 6-axis, but you can connect an e-compass and it automatically runs the magnetic sensor calibration. What's specific about this? It's size, okay, you might say, but very specific is you have a 1.6 milliamp power consumption in full 9 degree of freedom sensor utilization. This is factor 4 to 5 better than you see today. It's very good. Do you think we're happy with this? No. Why? Because still, if you calculate 1.6 milliamps, I tell you, typical competitors today are at 5 milliamps. Still, battery lifetimes for wearable devices are not there where they should be today. And that's one of the reasons why today wearable devices, probably few of you have a real wearable device besides the mobile phone. That's one of the reasons why wearable devices are not where they should be today in the market. So the race goes on. BHI 160 is an important step, but it's just one of the steps. The next thing is, I mentioned, we need to enhance our senses. One of the things that is of crucial importance for us humans is air quality. Air quality is a sense where we do not have natural senses. Probably we were designed to live in a very healthy environment, somewhere in a cave, and the fireplace is outside. Well, our world is different. We live in buildings. We live with lots of cars and pollution emission around us. And the first step is to recognize which is a good environment for me, which one is a bad environment for me. The solution is definitively a solution. A sensor that measures pressure, temperature, humidity, and VOCs. All-in-one solution comes with a software package. A normal user does not even need to know how these things work. If you wanted to do this a few years ago, of course you can buy this type of sensors discrete. First, you won't get them running properly. Second, you will measure lots of strange things because the software adaptation is very complicated. Today, you don't need to worry. You can focus on the device you want to manufacture. So this is one of the examples. Simple market, indoor air quality for air conditions, indoor air quality in automotive, in lots of other devices. So that's the answer to the challenges of how do we make the infrastructure of Internet of Things work? By bringing in useful solutions. By bringing in solutions, first, that make sense for the end user. Secondly, that can be integrated by the device manufacturers. And this is where the strength of Bosch and also Bosch SensorTech comes to play, being a strong system integrator and providing all the domain know-how to our customers integrated into a microcontroller. And with this, I want to say thank you. And I expected questions, but I see questions answered afterwards. Thank you.